There's just one more type of interval that we need to know about before we can say we've got a good grasp of how they work, and that is the seventh. Now, while the seventh doesn't come up all that often in melodies, if you start putting in intervals of a seventh in melodies, it'll sound very disjointed. Have a listen to this. That distance between the last two notes of that melody was a seventh, and it's quite uncomfortable and quite jerky to imagine singing that kind of interval. But we do see sevenths a lot in some harmonies and sometimes in melodies, and so it's really useful to be able to identify both that we're looking at a seventh and also which type of seventh we have in front of us. And in this video we're going to have a look at a major seventh and a minor seventh. And you can probably guess by now how we're going to be able to identify the seventh. Say we were to start on C in both of these cases, so put a C at the beginning there and put a C at the beginning there. How would we find a note, a major seventh or a minor seventh away? Well, we're going to be counting 7 letter names, including the top and bottom, to get our pair of interval notes. So starting on C, let's count some more letter names. D is 2, E is 3, F is 4, G is 5, A is 6, and B is 7. So we can be quite sure that if we're dealing with an interval that goes from C to B, or D to C, or E to D, or F sharp to E, any of these intervals will be some kind of seventh. And then we just need to check, probably by counting semitones, which type of seventh it is. In this case, C to B is a major seventh. It contains 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 steps from the bottom to the top. You see, we've almost made an octave. This is the largest interval we can have before we reach an octave. And it's 11 semitones, because there's 12 semitone steps from one octave to another. There's 12 semitone steps from C here to C up here. So if we just go one less than that, we're going to be looking at 11 semitones, and that gives us a major seventh. And just like many of the other intervals we've looked at, if we reduce a major interval by 1 semitone, so having 10 semitones, which gives us a B flat in this case, we're going to have a minor seventh. Knowing the difference between a major seventh and a minor seventh can be really helpful to us when we're building chords, particularly if we want to go a little bit beyond the standard basic triad that we've already looked at. If we remember the C major triad, it looks something a bit like that, and it uses the first, the third, and the fifth scale degrees. One thing we can do to make this triad a bit more interesting is to start to add some other notes into the mix. Let's have a listen to what happens if I add in a B. That gives us a kind of smooth, jazzy sound to our chord. And in fact, the name for this chord is a C major seventh chord. And the reason it's called a C major seventh chord is it includes this interval of a major seventh. There's the B and C that we've already looked at, and if we just fill in the other triad notes of C major triad, you'll see that we get a C major 7 triad. Just the same way we can add an interval of a minor seventh above our root to give us an interesting colour to add to a triad, and if we do that we're going to get something called a C dominant seventh chord. Now I've spoken about this in a bit more detail in another video which I'm sure you can go and find, but another way of remembering how to build a C dominant seventh chord, the notation is like this, so we use seventh chords, dominant seventh chords so often that we don't even write in dominant seventh or dom 7 or anything. When we see a 7 we just assume in our minds that we're using a C dominant seventh chord, and the C dominant seventh chord is produced when we take our C major triad and add a note, a minor seventh, above the root of the triad, and there's our C. So if we add a minor seventh above, that's going to give us B flat, and we have that chord there, which is a C dominant seventh chord. You might remember it from lots of rock and roll songs use these chords, and lots of blues songs use these chords to create a kind of groovy, jazzy feel, and something a little bit more interesting than just using the basic triads on their own.